Okay, so now we're going to bring back in the other variables from the GDP accounting equation, or the expenditure equation as we now call it. So if we remember, GDP equals C plus I plus G plus NX. Okay, now we have an equation that looks like Y equals C0 plus MPC times Y, okay, plus I plus G plus NX. Now, what we're going to do is, we're going to consider now. So this is the consumption function, right? That's C. And we're going to ignore that for the moment. What we're going to consider, this is induced spending, consumption is, because it's dependent upon your income level. We're going to consider, however, these other variables to be autonomous. Now, just as some interest, remember, NX is exports minus imports. Your book may consider imports as being induced consumption as a function of income. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to keep it all autonomous, okay? Now, what that does is that simplifies our model considerably, okay? So we are going to have real GDP on the horizontal axis, and now we are going to have planned expenditures on the vertical axis, okay? And so we've got our same 45-degree line. Now, what this 45-degree line means is that if all planned expenditures, if we spent every dollar of GDP exactly, and we didn't save any, and we just spent dollar for dollar, the economy would be on that 45-degree line, okay? Having said that, our planned expenditures, however, is going to be derived from this function here. Now, if you remember, when we were modeling consumption, this C0, this autonomous consumption, was an intercept, okay? So that would be, say, this amount here. Well, all these other autonomous variables are intercepts as well, and they add to it. So your intercept now would be C0 plus I0 plus G0 plus NX0. So say that's G0. Okay, say that's I0, and say that's NX0. Okay, so all this distance right here then would be C0 plus I0 plus G0 plus NX0. All we're doing is just shifting the intercept up. The slope of the line is the same. And why is that? Because MPC is the slope of the line. So the slope of the line is exactly the same as before. Okay, let me extend this out. So this then is our aggregate planned expenditures model. If I could write, it would be great. Okay, that is our aggregate planned expenditures model. Now, how does this model work? Well, it determines our level of real GDP, equilibrium level of GDP, dependent upon the amount of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. Now, we have to understand why this model has an equilibrium of this level of planned expenditures and this level of real GDP. In other words, this level of planned expenditures by households, firms, etc., government, etc., yields this much in real GDP. Okay? Now, why is that an equilibrium? Because assume that the economy is out here in real GDP. Okay? what does this mean? This means that planned expenditures is less than real GDP. Okay? Firms are going to be sitting on a lot of inventory. In other words, the economy isn't spending as much overall as firms assume they would spend. So firms then are sitting on a lot of inventory. Firms are going to back up production and GDP is going to fall. On the other hand, assume that the economy is sitting over here. This means that planned expenditure exceeds real GDP. In other words, firms aren't going to have enough inventory to satisfy the demand from consumers, firm spending, government, etc. What does this mean? Their inventory stock's going to be depleted and they're going to have to bump up production, moving toward equilibrium real GDP. That is our complete expenditure model, the Keynesian cross diagram in a nutshell. We'll get to the dynamics of this diagram in the next video.